In today's episode, we will talk with one of world's leading analysts in the field of logistics automation, and he's also an expert in humanoid tech. So, if you want to know whether humanoids are ready to be deployed in your warehouse, stay with us.
Automation Awakenings, your weekly dose of best practices for logistics automation.
Welcome to the next episode of the Automation Awakenings podcast. And as you can see already, we have an extraordinary episode today because I have a special guest with me here online. He is the founder and principal analyst of STIQ, world's leading research institute for logistics automation. Welcome to the show, Tom Andersson.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thank you very much for taking the time today with me to discuss the hot topics of logistics automation. And first of all, STIQ. During my preparation for this episode, of course, I checked your website and it stands for Style Intelligence. But how did you arrive at this name? What has inspired you?
So a little bit about the company, perhaps first, and then so I worked in mergers and acquisitions research for quite a long time, due diligence, helping investors and so on with their taking decisions to invest or not. In 2018, I started Style Intelligence, and as part of that, we tried to market the business quite well. So we started writing a few free reports on AI, actually, which was one of the few first topics. And some of those topics were about fashion AI or AI use within fashion. So we thought the Style Intelligence was the best name at that time. As we progressed a bit later in 2018, we wrote a report on goods-to-person solutions, again, as marketing collateral. And that particular report was looked at by Six River Systems, and they contacted us quite quickly afterwards and wanted to have it downloadable from their website. So we told them, give us a small amount of money, and they did very quickly, which sparked then the idea that we should write free market research reports that are essentially advertising funded as well. And during that process, pivoting from the consulting services sector into a publisher of free market research reports, we also changed the name around, 2019, 2020 into STIQ Limited or STIQ Limited.
All right, understood. Yeah, I think many people know you for your research papers in the automation community, and I know that there is a big fan base. They're really looking forward reading your papers, and they are provided for free, which is also a little bit uncommon. So what is the philosophy or your vision behind this decision?
Well, as said, so the reports, they started out as marketing collateral, but then we obviously found that, there were really a win-win situation if we could write really high-quality reports that were also distributed across the sectors. We got kind of input, quality input from loads of participants, because we interview up to 50 participants or stakeholders, I should say, rather, for each of our reports. And then we thought there is a win-win situation where everybody in the sector kind of gains from having an open source market research solution as well.
Okay, yeah, cool. There is one big hot topic at the moment in the automation community, and these are humanoids. And there's also a report available on humanoids from STIQ. Now let's jump into the topic. From your point of view, what is a humanoid robot, and what is also the difference to classic mobile robots?
This is a very good question, very good starting point for which we kind of struggle with a bit as well to understand, because in each of our reports we really try to get in on the depth of like segmenting the markets that we look at, and how do you segment them, then different characteristics, mechanical, software, and so on as well. And you're right. What is a humanoid, and how does it differ from, let's say, a 7-axis cobot? Or, for example, if you take 2 or even 3 or 4 cobots and put them together, is that also a humanoid? Or, if you just put a head on those 4 cobots, is that then a humanoid? So we struggled very much with understanding how we should segment the sector. Firstly, because the sector is very nascent and there's not a lot of players. So we started thinking about this probably already in 2023, how the segmentation should look like. And now we've come to conclusion that there are many different. So humanoids actually is one segment within limbed robotics, multi-limbed robotics, we should say, really. So what we have in our report, for example, if anyone wants to download that for free as well, is that we segmented by therapeutic robots, which are then more of, medical healthcare robotics, exoskeletons and so on as well. And then we look at robots that are used within entertainment that are made to look as potentially a humanoid or resembling a human, but have far less capabilities, or where the main capability is also then to entertain people or to think that that robot is human-like. And then we have humanoids and quadrupeds as well. And then finally we have also information type robots like Pepper, SoftBank's Pepper, for example, that go around with arms and just interact with people, trying to give them information. Finally, in the middle of all this, so if you think if you have like a quadrant, and then in the middle you have then what we also call butlers, which is the 1 or 2 armed mobile robots, which go around, was it Google? They had Everyday Robotics, I think they had, which they unfortunately closed down. But there are several different robot companies now kind of entering that spot as well. So I'm not sure if that actually defines a humanoid for you or not, but that's how we look at the market, and everything that then is up in the top right-hand corner of our segmentation is what we refer to as a humanoid.
Yeah, thanks. After understanding the definition of a humanoid, of course, what is interesting, why are they becoming now so popular? I mean, we know them since a long time from science fiction movies. You named also some examples just now, but it feels that it's the hot topic of 2025 for automation. Why is that?
That's a very good question. Perhaps I can try to answer it. We have not answered it in our report, but we've seen obviously the evolution of robotics. So industrial robots and so on as well. They've been here for a long time. But around in the 2010s, we saw the emergence of ROS, or open source robotics operating systems. And with that, we saw a huge uplift in mobile robot companies as well. You can see the scale. It's tremendous kind of growth in the sector. And I think as a result of that increase as well, we saw many other types of robots being developed. And then at the pinnacle of that, we think is probably humanoids, which kind of came after the quadrupeds and so on as well, which were developed then mainly by Boston Dynamics and all their videos and everything as well. So I think they've just taken on a life of their own now. But what comes after humanoids, that might perhaps be a more interesting question. I don't know.
Yeah, well, first of all, the potential looks really promising, and many of the logistics colleagues really want to use the humanoids as soon as possible. Now, from your point of view, where do you see good use cases for these devices?
You only have good questions for me.
Sure.
Our view is perhaps that it depends on how you see a use case. Do you see the use case as being profitable use or just more of an experimentation use? I think there are plenty of experimentation uses, proof of concept type and trials and so on as well. What we have not seen is a proper profitable application as of yet. And part of that is that when you talk about humanoids, sometimes you get into this mindset that this is humanoids, this is like an insulated sector which doesn't have any competition or anything. But of course, when you go and try to find a solution in the market, you find mobile robots, you find industrial robot, cobots, any other type of robots as well, that all compete with the humanoid as well. Now, humanoids can presumably do many, many different things, but we have not yet seen one, super application where humanoids come in. And more interestingly, when we talk to end customers who have an interest in using humanoids as well, they all tell us that the humanoid vendors are offering the robot as an agnostic application robot. So what that means is that the end customer themselves have to find an application and then apply the robot to that, rather than someone saying this robot is for picking apples within your factory or something. So that creates kind of like an interesting perhaps conflict between finding the right application and so on as well. If that,
talking about customers, I mean you hear and see a lot, I suppose. Have you ever observed a humanoid already working in like day-to-day business already, or is it still on experimental level?
In our view, it's still at experimental level, where the the application or the use case is isolated, perhaps even from core production or any production that needs to go out. So it's more in kind of trial areas, experimentation areas, and so on as well. That's where we primarily see them. I mean, we've seen several humanoids at trade shows, for example, as well, moving plastic totes from one machine to another as well. So we think it will take some time before clear applications with production level work comes into it as well.
Looking on the humanoid market, which robots are there available already today, or which are interesting from your point of view we should keep an eye on?
You mean vendors, I guess, here in this case?
Yeah.
That's a really tricky story. And I guess it depends on where in the world you are as well. So, for example, if you're a Chinese company, you probably look more at Chinese vendors such as Unitree, Ubitech, and even Pudu now have their own humanoid as well. If you're in the US, you probably want to work with Figure, Agility Robotics and Aptronic and so on as well. If you're in Europe, you probably want to work with either Chinese or US. There's not really much of choice. You obviously have 1X in Norway, and there are probably a few others as well in Spain and so on. But question is how advanced they are at this stage. I think it's pretty much dependent on where you're based right now.
Okay. Yeah. Well, you said most of them are still in an experimental state, but what is actually missing to get them run inside our real logistics environment?
Yeah, this is another tricky question. Because what if I go back to this when I talk about humanoids are not in a vacuum kind of sector of its own right. They are also forced into moving faster with their R&D, because all like KUKA, ABB, and so on as well, they will kind of drive their R&D quicker. Some mobile robotics companies will drive their R&D. So there's a continuously changing landscape of capabilities of robots, of existing incumbent robots that humanoids then have to kind of navigate somehow or become better than. And will they do that by only keeping the status quo and making kind of like a better arm or something like that? It's highly unlikely. We think that there are multiple different technologies that need to kind of combine for humanoids to evolve into a second or third stage even. So right now we have devised in our report as well, we devised 5 levels of humanoids where, it's from the very, very simple to the very, very super complex future, 40 years in the future kind of robots. We think we're just at the end of stage 1 or level 1 really right now, possibly that these robots need to kind of cruise all the way through to the beginning of level 3 to kind of make to have some kind of bigger market adaptability as well. And that in turn will also demand loads of investments from suppliers and component vendors, even battery vendors and so on as well. So the whole supplier landscape also have to go full in on this as well.
Okay, you said that humanoids are not operating in an isolated market. And sure, there are our classical mobile robots friends like AGVs and AMRs. Where do you see key advantages of deploying then humanoid robots in operations? Are there any, or is it just a mobile robot with a head?
So we're starting to see, let's say it like this instead. We have seen mobile robots with arms on them for a long, long time. It's nothing new. There has been some reluctance in industries to adopt this, partly because of lack of suitable technologies like SLAM and also ARM technologies then, and actually getting the accurate positioning of the arm together with the mobile robot. This might be changing. We're starting to see more and more robots with arms, but perhaps in very particular use cases such as case picking, wholesale case picking within F&B or CPG type applications. When it comes to replacing those with a humanoid, is that possible right now? Potentially. But can they do it more profitably than a mobile robot with an arm on top of it? That's perhaps more questionable.
Yeah, absolutely. And a topic which is there since the beginning of automation is the impact of the workforce, or to the workforce on the employees. So already when a mobile robot suddenly appears next to an operator, it's a new situation. And with humanoids, I think this gets even more intense because it's looking like a human. It has a head, sometimes even eyes. What do you think, or have you ever seen feedback or what did the employees say when they finally seen a humanoid working together with them?
So I have not spoken to anyone who actually worked together with these unprepared, who is not already like a humanoid fan, if I should say that. But if we look at things that have happened with mobile robots, I am pretty sure that how should we say this? The emotional response might even be higher when you work with the humanoid. And obviously we perhaps also should talk about safety standards and so on as well, which are perhaps not where they need to be right now, especially for humanoids. But so for one example, someone told me about a company where they had deployed mobile robots or forklift robots. One of the staff saw one of the robots coming towards them quite far away, but jumped out of the way and broke his ankle as a result. Now, that's nothing to do with the actual automation. It was more of a result of trying to get out of the way or So how this kind of may play out if a humanoid comes towards you, perhaps it even looks threatening, or I don't know. So it's there are many unknowns for sure, for certain, in that as well. But one thing more is, a lot of people are talking about this, that robots will replace people as well. And my take on that is perhaps that if we look at farming today, where tractors are in use, like a normal vehicle, how many jobs does a tractor replace? If you think back 100 years ago, 50 years ago, perhaps even, yeah. So it's probably hundreds and hundreds of jobs. No one is complaining about tractors these days, and I think it will be exactly the same about robots in decades to come. Yeah, so
that's a good example. Yeah. Yeah, you talked about the emotional impact on us, on the workforce. There's also a huge financial impact on venture capital companies. And yeah, as we know, humanoids are a hot topic, and also for the venture capitalists. Why is that? What do you think?
You're asking me to trying to second guess a venture capital company's investment criteria, but I think there is huge interest, as you say, in the sector, and we've seen billions and billions of dollars being sunk into or being invested into these humanoid companies. Most recently, Aptronic raised 350 million, which seemed like a huge amount of money, but then you have others that figure, I think, raised 650 million just a few, or the last year actually. So these amount of money are kind of required to develop a humanoid with all the different complexities and so on as well. And I think part of this is also due to Tesla and Musk kind of jumping into the space. I think it was in 2021 when they announced that Optimus would be kind of working in all their factories pretty soon, and their developments are now sorry, can we cut that?
Sure.
Yeah, okay, fine. Let's see, where do I pick up? Yeah, so Tesla and Musk obviously jumped into the sector in 2021, and that kind of spurred on some of that investment as well, because now investors see that, Tesla, Musk is interested in the space and there must be something to it. But also perhaps that these investors see that there will be some residual value in these companies as well. If they go under. So, for example, many of these companies are now developing their own actuators. They're developing their own motors. They're developing loads of advanced AI components and software and so on as well. So I think that investors not only look at the potential of a future upswing, so perhaps they can get 100 times back of their investment, and if all fails, there's always some kind of residual value with motors, advanced motors, AI components, software, and so on as well. So they will get their money back, and that has kind of de-risked these investments, I think, as well.
That means you would say this big wave of venture capital funding will pay off?
Not necessarily, perhaps for one or two of the companies, but at least, so the upside for an investor, if they put in 350 million, perhaps they will get back 3 billion potentially if the market should take off. That could be a potential upside. If the market doesn't take off, in that case, the company that they invested in might have developed some really advanced hardware that could be sold as to a component supplier or become a component supplier in the future. If they've developed the latest technology in batteries and so on as well to develop their humanoid. So that's the residual value. In that case, they would perhaps get back their 350 million and wouldn't have lost anything apart from interest rate and so on as well. But in general terms, they would not make a loss on the investment.
Okay, let's have a look into the future before we come to an end of this podcast episode, because time is ticking so fast. But I really would like to know from your point of view, will humanoids really reshape logistics automation? And if yes, when will this happen? Like this year, in 5 years, or will it take longer?
You've only served me up with really good questions here. I think I can't see an immediate future where humanoids will make an impact on logistics. And I think part of that is obviously the bipedal movements as well. Why would they need legs if you can have wheels? That might be easier. But will a two-armed robot be any better? That remains to be seen. I mean, there are some really big topics. In order for the intralogistics sector to reach the dark warehouse, then I think there will have to be some combination or hybrid robotics to assist, to connect all the, a sortation system, a picking system, an ASRS system, and so on as well. That needs to be combined in some way. Now, if the humanoid is that thing that combines all these islands of automation, that remains to be seen. But there's definitely kind of increasing demand or requirements for that type of robot, or a kind of robot that could solve that. It doesn't have to be a humanoid, but it could be a humanoid. I don't think anything like that will happen within perhaps the next 5 years. Within the next 10, I don't know. My crystal ball is on service today. So,
do you see any other technologies rising up in the near or far future?
So, we're starting to see, like this year, for example, in 2025, we have noticed an increase in the number of new product announcements. So we just recently saw Exotech announcing their next generation SkyPod, for example, which has kind of created a composite ASRS system as we see it. Those type of developments will continue in 2026 and 2027 as well. So what I go back to this, that the humanoids are not, a kind of solution for everything, because all other solutions will also come and develop. The best example I have of this is probably when we saw a particular company showcasing at ProMat last, or was it Modex? And they were picking bins from one solution and putting them onto a conveyor belt. Next year at the next show, we saw that the company that provided the automation solution had already automated away the use of that humanoid. So if humanoids do not develop fast enough, they will just be overtaken by other automation solutions. I'm not sure if that answers your question properly, but that I go back to this, that humanoids almost have to do twice the amount of R&D to be faster than how the rest of the market develops.
Yeah, Tom, thank you very much. Wow, so many exciting insights from the humanoid and logistics automation world. So thanks again for joining our podcast here today. Great that you've been here with us.
My pleasure. Thanks a lot for hosting me, Oliver.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I would come back to you as soon as your crystal ball is back from maintenance for a follow-up episode.
Excellent. Sounds like a good idea, yeah.
Cool. Yeah, so Tom, thanks. And thank you also for our audience outside listening to this exciting episode. See you in 2 weeks again here with Automation Awakenings. Thank you and see you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This was another episode of the Automation Awakenings podcast. Visit us at automation-awakenings.com.